Welcome, welcome, class. How's it going? Good to be with you all. Oh, man. You guys able to hear me? We sounding good? Looks like Chloe was here, Elena was here. Anybody else coming in? Hey Josh, how's it going? Guys, it's crazy. We only have one more week. This is our last week of school. Thanks, Chloe. Yeah, I've been growing it out because of Robin Hood. Do I look like Robin Hood? Nice. How's everybody doing? You guys all excited for Christmas break? Just coming up, right? Today, basically just, 4 more days of school. Those that are on top of things, you can take Wednesday off. Those that need to get caught up probably should work on Wednesday. But it's crazy. This quarter is done. Yeah, I bet we're all excited. You're excited, Chloe? I am excited as well. Excited to spend time with family. Excited to get ready for next quarter and do a lot of work to, just get ahead, right? Hey, Elena. Well, I don't want this to be too long. Yeah, you excited, Josh? So I don't want this to be too long. So let's just dive in, right? Let's get to the lesson, and then if you guys want to hang out for a little bit after, we can. Hey Mason, how's it going? Got a few of you guys here today, which is awesome. Elena, Chloe, Josh, Mason. It's awesome. Super excited. But yeah, those that are going to be watching the replay, let's get right into the lesson so it's not too long. And then if you guys want to hang out after, we can answer any questions that you guys got, and then get you guys on your way to finishing this quarter. It's pretty exciting. So last chapter we talked about the 100 Years' War, and it actually lasted a little bit longer than 100 years, 116, right? And it wasn't really going on the whole time, but it was going on a little. It was off and on, that war. Chloe's talking about how she learned about Joan of the Arc. There's a show on Netflix. Nice. Is it cool? Well, maybe you should teach the lesson then. You ready? Okay, so I'm just getting my notes ready. This chapter 20, Joan of Arc, our primary focuses are to describe the events in the life of Joan of Arc and her role in the military. We'll be able to evaluate the effects that Joan of Arc had on the 100 Years' War, which we learned about last chapter, and why is she remembered today. And then, as always, we'll have the opportunity to learn the vocabulary words for this chapter. And just a reminder, you get extra credit for history and extra credit for this chapter if you take one of the vocabulary words and make a sentence of your own. And I know, Chloe, you're probably going to put that core vocabulary chat command. I don't have them up yet, but we'll go through them through the chapter. Looks like Elena's asking what show. I'm not for sure, but it seems like Chloe said there was a cool show of Joan of the Arc. So after this, and if you're done with the schoolwork, maybe you should check out the show on Netflix, but make sure you put away all distractions to finish this quarter strong, all right, guys? Just one more week, work really hard, be disciplined, put things away that are distracting you like Netflix or TikTok, Instagram, video games, and just focus really hard, and then you can relax during Christmas break. Glad that Scotland made it. The Who Was show. I learned about Joan on the Who Was show. After we're done with this lesson, then maybe we can look it up, all right? Okay. So we learned about the 100 Years' War in the last chapter. The war was terribly traumatic for the people who lived through it. Remember that the 100 Years' War went on for not just those years, but more than 100 years, right? It was about 116, and that affected many generations. We learned at the beginning of this year that a generation is 25 years. So a 100-year war, the 100 Years' War was almost 5 generations, 125 years. It wasn't that long, but 5 generations is 125 years. That's how long it lasted, 116. So during this chapter, we'll be learning about a certain heroine. A heroine is the word for a woman hero. And so we're going to learn about a certain heroine, Joan of Arc. And it looks like Chloe's learned a little bit about her. So maybe she can bring some insight to us during this chapter, okay? Okay. Cool, yep. Let's try to keep everything focused on the chapter now, okay? We're going to get started. So please keep all comments in the chat focused and centered on this chapter, okay? Not only so you can pay attention, and even help those that are watching right now, but you guys are also going to impact those that are watching the replay, okay? So those that are in the chat, people watching the replay can see what you're saying. So make sure all of your comments are focused. Comments and questions focus on this chapter. You can ask questions because that might be able to help those that are watching the replay as well. Help them to think and have critical thinking. All right, chapter 20, Joan of Arc. Okay, what do we do? Point out the big question, right? What does the big question say, class? Why do you think the story of Joan of Arc is still remembered today? So as we go through this chapter, think about why this story is still told today. Why do we still learn and remember Joan of Arc? Okay. All right, so let's start and let's follow along. A hero for the ages. You have read about great kings and warriors. Now you're going to read about a warrior who was certainly one of the greatest heroes of the Middle Ages, or the entire Middle Ages. Her leadership turned the tide of battle in the 100 Years' War. Okay, and there is our phrase or idiom for our vocabulary phrase or idiom, our first one of the chapter. What does turn the tide mean? Well, to read it together. Reverse the trend of events or the ways things are going. So things were going a certain way in the 100 Years' War, and then Joan of Arc came in and turned the tide and made things different. So her actions helped the French win a war that had gone on for so long. Yes, that's right. This great warrior was a woman. This could be like Scotland or Elena or Chloe when you guys are older. Just a few years, right? In fact, a teenager. She was a simple peasant girl, not a well-educated woman of noble birth. She was not much bigger than most of you, but Joan of Arc became a giant in the history of the Middle Ages. Not in physical sense being a giant, but in what she accomplished. Her story is still exciting to read more than 500 years after she lived. Okay, let's scroll down and look at this picture. Looks pretty cool. Looks kind of like a mosaic, little tiles. So this is a depiction of Joan of Arc helped turn the tide, right? She changed the way things were going, changed the trend in the 100 Years' War. It's a pretty cool picture. Looks like there's a bunch of soldiers behind her. All right, hope returns. We have read about how the English won many battles against the French in the 100 Years' War. France seemed to have all the advantage in the war, but these advantages were often of little use against the English. All the years of fighting and looting had left the French feeling hopeless and dispirited. It seemed as if they had lost the will to fight the English. In battle after battle, 10 to 15 times as many French soldiers were killed as English soldiers. Both sides prepared for battle in a way that would seem strange to us today, but was traditional in the Middle Ages. The French waited patiently on their horses while the English set up their barricades of pointed stacks and put all their archers into position. Then, when everyone was ready, the battle would begin. At that point, the English would shower arrows on the advancing French horsemen. Sounds like they should probably advance while they're getting set up, huh? Very, like it said, it's very strange of how they did this. But that's the way they did it. So the English shot from powerful longbows. The sharp arrows could pierce the French knights' thin sheets of armor. Most French knights never got close enough to use their swords on the English. In the last decades of the war, though, the French looked for another way to fight the English. One of the reasons for this new sense of determination was inspired by a simple girl named Jean. In English, we call her Joan. Joan believed that God had given her the mission of driving the English out of France and restoring the French king to the throne. Okay, let's pause and learn what restoring is. This is our next vocabulary word. What does it say? Look to the right. It says to restore is to return to the way things used to be. I know a lot of us are hoping that life will be restored to what it used to be. You know, this COVID-19, this coronavirus has changed a lot of things, and we hope that life will be restored, right? So we can go out and hang out with friends. We can play in sports, not have to wear masks. That's a way things could get restored. So Joan wanted to restore the way things were that used to be. Visions and voices. Yes, most definitely, huh, Chloe? We want things to be restored. All right, Joan grew up in a small village called Domremy. When she was about 13 years old, she began having visions and hearing voices. At first, these voices, which Joan believed to be the voices of God and the saints, simply told her to live a good life. As the years went by, however, she heard the voices more often. Finally, she understood that she had been told that God had chosen her to rescue the kingdom of France. Joan was 17 years old. And even so, those that may believe in God or not, maybe you've felt or have heard voices in your head or felt feelings. That's kind of what she is kind of describing, right? She felt or heard voices in her head coming from God, but maybe some of you guys have had experiences like maybe you should go say hi to somebody, or maybe you should, not go do something. That's a voice in your head. You can call it conscience. She's saying this is coming from God, voices from God or saints. But I bet some of you guys have had similar experiences, maybe not to this scale, like that you have to rescue Gallup or, the nation, but maybe you have. I'm just saying, I think some of you guys might be able to relate to what she's experiencing. This is when Joan was 17 years old. Joan was stunned. She knew nothing about war or politics, so she definitely is feeling, a little scared. Definitely not ready to do this, but she's going to listen, right? Yet the voices continued. After the village of Domremy was burned by the English, the voices became urgent and more specific. They told her that she should go to a large town about 12 miles from her home. There, Joan was told to ask the governor to arrange a meeting with the man who is next in the line to be king, the Dauphin. So a Dauphin is the oldest son of the King of France, the male heir, so the next one in line to the throne, next one in line to be king. The voices told Joan that her mission was to free the city of Orleans, which was under siege by the English, and to see the Dauphin crowned King of France. So that's her mission, right? So a young girl is hearing these voices in her head, voices from God, and she is supposed to free the city and to help the Dauphin become the next king of France. So at first, the governor had no interest in the meeting. No interest in meeting her. So Joan simply stood outside his castle, praying and explaining to people why she had come. Scary that, what do you think is scary, Mason? That being so young, having such a big task? You think that's what's scary? You can keep definitely answer that. I wonder what you think is scary. I'd love to hear. I'm gonna keep reading though. Okay. So Joan soon had a small group of supporters. As she's standing outside, she's getting some traction. Some people are starting to believe her. So one of them, a young soldier, gave her a young man's clothes to put on. Someone else gave her a horse. Yet another person cut her hair for her. The governor finally agreed to meet with her. Your mom heard something? Is that something about what we're talking about? Or yeah, she had to dress up as a boy. You can't really hear me? Can anybody else not hear me? My mic should sound pretty good. Let me know if you're having a hard time hearing me, class. It might be your internet, or you might have to turn up your volume on your computer or on the YouTube app. But yeah, she had to dress up as a boy. It's crazy, huh? That's the only way the king would hear her, or the governor would hear her. So, yeah, it's weird. All right, so at first, he laughed. The governor laughed at her. But later, for reasons no one really understands, he changed his mind. He gave her a sword and permission to go to the Dauphin. He gave her an archer, a royal messenger, and 3 servants. Her friend, the young soldier, went as well. I wonder what changed his mind. What do you guys think? Nice, you guys can hear me? Good. All right, so the governor finally agreed to listen to Joan, probably because he thought she was a man, you know. And then he laughed at her at first, or him, right? Because he thought it was a boy, and then ended up changing his mind. And so now he's on his way to the Dauphin in Orleans, and let's see what happens. A victory at Orleans. Joan and her little band traveled through 350 miles of cold, flooded rivers and war-torn countryside. So a lot of war happened on the countryside, so things were, destroyed. Didn't look very pretty. She was admitted into the grand hall of the castle where the Dauphin was staying. It was filled with more than 300 knights and many courtiers. Is a noble. Let's look at that. A noble who was part of the royal court and advised the ruler. So people who advised the king or queen or Dauphin in this case. So they were all dressed in fine clothes, and the Dauphin stood among them. Legend has it that the Dauphin was testing Joan by mingling with the crowd, but Joan surprised everyone by walking right up to him and kneeling before him. It may be that Joan had seen his picture before on coins or banners. Yet it was very impressive that a simple peasant girl could pick him out of such a crowd. That is impressive. Joan was given a room in the castle, and she began to practice her fighting skills. A group of knights gathered around her. We can't explain how, but Joan soon had these famous warriors willing to do whatever she asked. All we can assume was that Joan's faith and her leadership inspired others to follow her. With an army of some 3,000 to 4,000 soldiers, Joan set off to Orleans. The city had been under siege for nearly 7 months. The English hadn't yet succeeded in capturing the city, but the French forces were becoming weak. As Joan rode through Orleans on the night of her arrival, townspeople carrying torches pressed around her. Rumors had spread through France that a young woman dressed as a boy had been sent by God to save them from the English. I just want to pause really quick. This reminds me a little bit about Robin Hood, right? We've been reading how Maid Marian would usually dress as a page, dressed as a boy, to go out and hunt, and she usually would go find Robin. So I wonder if Robin Hood's story has a little bit of Joan of Arc kind of in the kind of intertwined in the plot. No worries, Elena. You can continue with us and rewatch it if you want. Joan was eager to battle the English, but the French commander urged her to be patient. Joan agreed, but a few days later, things changed. Joan urged the French commander to take action. "In God's name," she said, "my council, advisors, has told me I must attack the English." Her voices had spoken to her. She rode down to the gates of the city, where she found wounded French soldiers retreating from the English forces. When the French soldiers saw Joan on her horse, waving her white banner, they were revived. to return to strength or to bring back to life. So they were brought back to life. They turned around and headed back toward the English with such a surge of force that the English began to retreat. Joan predicted that she would be wounded, but she fought without a helmet so that her soldiers could see her. An arrow pierced her neck. She almost fainted with pain, but a few hours later she returned to the fight. After 3 days of fighting, the English were finally driven out of Orleans. The war was not over, but for the first time it seemed that the English might be defeated. Here's a cool picture. The people of Orleans cheered the victorious Joan and her soldiers. Okay, we are, I think it's just a little bit more and then we're done, okay, for this lesson. About a page and a half, or 2 pages and a half. Okay, now Joan devoted herself to the next part of her mission. She returned to the Dauphin and convinced him to travel to Reims. This was the city where the French kings had been crowned for the 100 years. Sorry, my thing is being funny right here. Okay, the problem was that that Reims was controlled by the Burgundians, who were on the side of the English. When Joan arrived, however, the residents of the city had a change of heart. They cheered for the Dauphin. The Burgundian army quietly slipped out of town, and the Dauphin was crowned Charles VII, King of France. Joan was at the peak of her glory. All right, 2 more sections, guys. How is this in line with what you saw, Chloe? Is this similar to the show you watched? Okay, 2 more pages. If the story of Joan of Arc was a fairy tale, she and King Charles VII would defeat the English and live happily ever after. In real life, politics entered the story. Once he was crowned, the king began making deals behind Joan's back. Joan simply wanted to keep fighting until the English were driven out of France, but the king made deals with the Burgundians and the English without telling Joan. In 1430, Joan was captured by Burgundian soldiers who then handed her over to the English. Whoa. Pretty similar, Chloe? Nice. That's not very cool. Joan of Arc. It's crazy that Joan of Arc had these voices tell her to get the Dauphin to be king. She made it happen, and now the Dauphin, who is King Charles VII, is, turning his back on Joan and letting her be captured by the Burgundian soldiers and then handed them over to the English. Not very cool, huh? Okay, trial and death. Joan was thrown into prison because she claimed to hear the voice of God and the voice of saints. Joan had to stand trial for her heresy. Okay, stand trial is to be judged guilty or innocent in a court of law. So she had to be judged. Heresy is the crime of going against the teachings of the church. Nice. You already know what's going to happen, huh, Chloe? So to prove this crime, Joan's enemies needed to find some people who were willing to repeat gossip or spread rumors. That was a lot of work. It took some time, but finally some ambitious churchmen stepped forward. They did not really know Joan, but were eager to please the bishop and the English. Day after day, they questioned her. They focused most of their questions on the voices that Joan claimed to hear and on the fact that she wore men's clothing. For a woman to wear men's clothing was a serious crime. Joan answered their questions simply and truthfully. It was hard to make much of a case against her, but after weeks of questioning and accusations, her enemies succeeded, and the court sentenced her to death. Oh man. So France succeeds. Although Joan was executed in year 1431, the tide of the war had turned. The French succeeded in driving the English out of their territories, except the city of Calais. 20 years after Joan's death, the church investigated her trial. After a complete review of the evidence, it was decided that the trial had been unfair. It was too late to help Joan, and no one involved in the unfair trial was ever punished. But Joan's reputation as a great hero or heroine was secure. For hundreds of years, writers and artists have told her story in poems, plays, painting, and statues. In 1920, the church declared the simple peasant girl a saint. And here's the statue of the heroic Joan of Arc in the London Westminster Cathedral. Pretty awesome, but sad how it all turned out. Okay. Anything, Chloe, that this chapter maybe might kind of missed? Maybe your show went a little bit more in depth. I mean, obviously you talked about how she was burned at the stake. Didn't talk about that. Okay, so the big question before we end, remember, why do you think the story of Joan of Arc is still remembered today? So some key points. So Joan believed in herself, especially when nobody else did. That is really important, right? She was an early example of a female hero. And think about the beginnings. Like, where did she come from? Was she born in nobility? Was she born with a lot of privilege, or maybe not? And why do you think that would be important? Why should we still remember her? So those are some points, tips, and hints to help you answer the big question. And that is it for our lesson today, class. Thanks for joining. It was awesome to have you all here. Elena, Chloe, Mason, Josh, Scotland, you guys are awesome. Thanks for coming in. And those that are watching the replay, I hope you enjoyed this lesson. We only have one more chapter. It's already pre-recorded, so maybe you guys can, or maybe some of you guys already watched it, or you can watch it today. And then we have our unit assessment, and then you're all done with history for this quarter, which is pretty exciting, huh? You got your haircut? Nice, Chloe. It's awesome. If you guys have any questions, let me know. If not, we can end this. And then if you do have any questions, I'll have a conference call on Thursday. Just open office hours for you to come ask questions. But that's it. Yeah, history is pretty awesome. I know we didn't have a lot of math lessons last week. See you, Chloe. Thanks for coming in. So Mr. Green got sick, and so I had to record some. And so they're a little bit late, so we probably won't be able to finish chapter 7. And then, but I'll be recording some more. So there are 2 lessons up for chapter 7. It's adding and subtracting fractions, which is pretty awesome. Your dad has a beard, it's pretty long. Nice. I'll probably cut mine after this quarter. I was just growing it out for Robin Hood. That's kind of fun, but it's getting kind of annoying. See you, Mason. Thanks for coming in. You're awesome. Just be disciplined, guys. This is just 5 more days and we're done with this quarter, okay? So just get all caught up, work hard, and you can relax during Christmas break. So, but all right, thanks for coming in. Again, thanks Mason, Scotland, Elena, Josh, Chloe. Did I miss anybody? Elena, Josh, Chloe, Mason, Scotland. You guys are awesome. I don't know, it has moments where it itches, sometimes it doesn't. But yeah, I think I'm gonna end so I can get some work done too, you know. Get some grading done. We're gonna end. It was good having you guys here. Take care, Scotland, Mason, Elena, Chloe, Josh. You guys are awesome. Everybody else that are watching the replay, thank you so much. Okay, see you, Scotland. You have a great day too. Thanks so much for coming. I'll see you guys later. See ya.